I left my front door unlocked last night. I'm now convinced someone else is living in my house. Our area is pretty safe from crime and thieves. You can usually leave your doors and windows open and nothing will happen. At least, that's what I thought until last night. I always told my wife that nothing bad would ever happen to us, but she was always weirdly scared about leaving the door unlocked. I now wish I had just listened to her. "You did it again," she yelled at me last week after I had left the door unlocked for a few hours and she noticed. "Someone's gonna come in here and murder us one of these days." I never did it on purpose and I didn't really take much notice of it. However, last night I went out for a late-night McDonald's run and came in with my hands full. Christine was fast asleep in the bedroom and I figured she wouldn't wake up because she was so out of energy from our bed session earlier. I went to bed a couple hours later at around 3 a.m. It didn't even occur to me that I'd forgotten to lock the door of our apartment again as I walked to the bedroom in my bare feet, turning off lights as I went. After a couple hours of restless sleep, maybe around 4 or 5 a.m., I got up to go to the bathroom. The apartment was completely blacked out with darkness and I couldn't see anything except by the very faint light of the moon outside. Still, I knew the apartment well enough to make it to the toilet by feeling the walls and doorways with my hands. I groped my way from handhold to handhold, stumbling my way through the blackness into the bathroom. The faint chirp of crickets could be heard outside and I knew it would still be a couple hours at least until sunrise. I still had time to get a bit more sleep before getting up for work. There was a creaking sound from the living room as if someone had just stepped on a floorboard. I got the sudden feeling that I wasn't alone. It was probably just the neighbor, I thought to myself. The floors and walls in the building were so thin you could hear everything that happened next door and in the apartment above. And our upstairs neighbors were always so loud it didn't seem abnormal. But still, it sounded slightly different, as if it were closer, setting me slightly on edge. Regardless, I went back into the bedroom. My heart was beating fast in my chest as I laid down in the bed and had a bit of difficulty closing my eyes. I thought about the door outside and the door to our apartment, realizing I had perhaps left it unlocked. I thought about the squeak of the floorboards and couldn't help but wonder if I was right about what had made that sound. My cat suddenly jumped up onto my lap from the floor, burrowing into my arm as if hiding from the cold, or from something else. She wasn't purring like she normally would have been, looking for affection. She seemed to be looking for something else. Protection, maybe? Then suddenly she looked up sharply with her mirrored eyes reflecting the dim moonlight. I followed her gaze as she froze and stared at the space ahead of us. As I lay there looking at the doorway to the room with her, I couldn't help but feel like there was the vague shape of a person there, and I thought I saw eyes vaguely hovering 6 feet above the ground, eyes like my cat's, mirrored and reflecting the dim moonlight back at me. Someone looking at us from the doorway to the bedroom? Or just my imagination? My cat burrowed her head deeper into my armpit and I looked up again and the shape in the doorway seemed to be gone. If it had even been there to begin with. I shook it off as ridiculous, telling myself that same old thing. We lived in a quiet apartment, in a quiet town. Things like that don't happen to us here. What I was worried about, that was something from a movie or a TV show, not something from real life. Reluctantly, after a long while of listening and glancing distrustfully at the darkness, I hesitantly closed my eyes, and I drifted back into a fitful and uneasy sleep, the cat sitting tense in the crook of my arm, watchful. In my dreams, I knew I was asleep, and yet I could control nothing. There was the soft sound of footsteps approaching from the darkness, of the door squeaking on its hinges as it opened, and I felt someone's presence enter the room. They stood over the bed and watched us. I was laying in bed with my arms limp at my sides. My wife was sleeping next to me and I could feel their dark presence, standing over us, watching us, breathing heavily. The thing which wasn't a man but wasn't a shadow but was something else, perhaps in between, stood staring at me from the darkness. It stood over me and murmured something incomprehensible. An incantation or a prayer, perhaps. It refused to leave, its face boring into mine with its rotten breath reeking like spoiled meat. I thought it would never leave when suddenly it was moving on, and inspecting my wife instead, probing her with its glassy reflective eyes. I was paralyzed with fear and tried to move my arm to wake her but was unable. Everything I did felt like it was in quicksand. My movements heavy and clumsy, weighted with impossible forces holding me down. Terrified, I tried to scream but found my vocal cords were likewise frozen, the same as the rest of me. The shadowy creature stood hovering over my wife for a few long moments, appraising her, then left the bedroom with an unsatisfied air. I woke up the next morning to the sound of a scream. My wife wouldn't speak to me when I asked her what was wrong. She was clutching her arms tightly around herself, trembling, and just pointed at the front door with a shaking hand. It was unlocked, and there was blood all over the doorknob. Not only that, but it was in our kitchen, I noticed as well. Boot prints covered in red were running all through the apartment where he'd been. Not only that, but there was a note on our coffee table. The police have it now, but I'll try to sum up its contents for you here. Did you see me there last night, looking at you from the doorway of your bedroom? I thought I caught you staring, perhaps, as I watched with my night vision goggles. Sometimes they catch the light of the moon just so, and people see a reflection like a large cat is watching them from the shadows. But I'm so careful now. I don't think you saw me. If you did, you wouldn't have gone back to sleep. Did you feel me standing over you? Watching you while you dreamt? Did you feel me in your dreams as I debated slicing pieces from you? Ripping you limb from limb? I almost did, you know, but I decided against it. I still feel a craving for something else, so I think I'll see what other doorknobs twist and turn in this building. See you again soon. And was signed by someone named Jaguar. After reading that, I threw up immediately. There were photos of us tucked beneath the letter, pictures he had taken of us while we were asleep. Eyes closed and snoring. I found out a few hours later that 2 women in our building were dead, both blondes who lived on the 4th floor together. We'd seen them in the elevator, but I didn't know their names. 2 more victims of unlocked doors, victims of the Jaguar. The police are out searching for him. Who knows if they'll ever find him, though. This morning, when I was leaving to go to work, I couldn't help but notice something. Something I hadn't noticed until now. He took a set of our house keys with him.